My name is Mine Ashgrove, and for the past 17 years, I've worked as a restorative artist, a profession many people don't even know exists. Most assume when someone passes away, they naturally look peaceful and ready for a final farewell. But that's rarely how it is. Death is messy. It distorts the face, bruises the skin, drains the color, and leaves behind a mask that hardly resembles the person they once were. My work is to reverse that damage, to painstakingly restore a face so that families can say goodbye without horror or shock. I employ cosmetics, wax, prosthetics, surgical thread, and sometimes wire, rebuilding what trauma and time have torn apart. It is delicate, precise work requiring an artist's eye and the steady hands of a surgeon. But it demands something more, an ability to look beyond the shattered or burned layers and see the person who once lived beneath. Last Monday, a body arrived that was especially challenging. A woman in her early 40s who had died following a devastating car accident. The report described her being thrown from the vehicle after it rolled several times on a rural road, sustaining massive head trauma and multiple facial fractures. The family had requested an open casket viewing, so I had to make her recognizable to them. They provided a snapshot from a family gathering taken about a year ago. In it, she was smiling genuinely, dark hair loosely braided behind her, high cheekbones framing her face, and a small scar above her left eyebrow, a childhood mark that was crucial to the family. That tiny detail mattered immensely. Erase it, and they would feel like a stranger lay in the casket rather than the woman they loved. When her body arrived, I spent a long time observing not just the wreckage, but the parts that remained intact. Her hands slender with freshly manicured nails, her shoulders lightly dusted with freckles, the small, close-set ears. These details anchored my reconstruction reminders that this was not merely a damaged body, but a person who had loved, laughed, and lived fully. My reverence for her life fueled my work. Then, I turned to her face. The damage was extensive on the right side. The skull fractured, cheekbone shattered, eye socket crushed, and the jaw dislocated and hanging at an unnatural angle. Torn skin, bruising, and swelling covered that side, while the left remained mostly intact with minor abrasions. I would use the undamaged side as my template to rebuild the right. Starting with the skeletal structure, I layered wax and a moldable polymer compound to recreate the cheekbone. This was painstaking work measuring, shaping, comparing constantly to both the photograph and her undamaged side. Human brains are wired to detect asymmetry, and even slight discrepancies could trigger an unsettling feeling in her family. Symmetry was essential. The compound felt strange beneath my fingers cold, then warming, pliable like clay as I molded the contours of a bone slowly emerging from nothing. Next came the eye socket. The orbital bone was crushed, fragments removed during autopsy, so I had to build a new foundation from scratch. Thin wires formed a delicate armature mimicking the natural shape, and I painstakingly layered wax around it to create a structure strong enough to hold a prosthetic eye at the right angle. The air filled with the scent of warm wax and faint chemicals from embalming fluid, an aroma that always lingers in these rooms. I embedded a blue glass eye matching her natural color, fixing it carefully to align perfectly with the intact left eye. The weight of that eye was solid in my palm, cool and real. The jaw posed another challenge. Dislocations are common in traumatic deaths and fixable if the bone holds. But her jaw was fractured in two places, misaligned. I had to manually guide it back, feeling it shift and grind softly, then wired it internally to stabilize the bone. The wire was hidden from view but crucial for the viewing. Once the structural repairs were done, the right side of her face now had form and shape, cheekbone raised, eye socket set, jaw secured, but it was far from finished. The torn skin, uneven color, and texture remained. That was where the real artistry started. I began suturing torn skin with fine medical thread, stitching the edges together under magnification. Needle deftly pulling thread with the precise tension needed to make seams invisible. Once sutured, I applied mortuary wax over the stitches, blending the edges seamlessly into surrounding tissue. Wax was warm and soft, and with careful fingertip pressing and smoothing, I erased the line between wax and skin, a vital step. Color was next to complex and often misunderstood aspect. Death drains natural pigmentation, leaving skin pale and lifeless. Embalming fluid preserves, but doesn't restore warmth or subtle color shifts that give a face life. I mixed my own cosmetics, foundations and tints layered gently to rebuild natural tone. For her, I chose an olive base warmed with peach undertones, applied with a damp sponge in circular motions for perfect blending and no visible marks. Covering bruises was tougher. Deep purples and blues bleed through foundation. I first applied peach-colored correctors to neutralize the dark hues, layering foundation for coverage. Despite 3 coats, faint shadows lingered along the jawline, so I planned to adjust viewing light to soften these shadows for the family. Details came next: shadows around eyes, a blush on cheeks, and carefully dabbed lip color. The lips were most delicate, too much color looked harsh. Too little gave a lifeless appearance. I sought the perfect balance to suggest life without exaggeration. By midnight, after 8 hours, my hands ached and my eyes burned from intense focus under bright lamps. But the work was not yet done. Hair needed styling, final cosmetics applied, and the entire face assessed under harsher fluorescent light, which reveals every imperfection. I covered her body, turned off the light, locked the room. The funeral home was silent and empty, and I drove home exhausted but uneasy. That night, I lay awake haunted by that face, the broken cheek, crushed eye socket, torn skin, and the reconstructed visage, almost lifelike, yet not quite. There was something off, something I couldn't name. I returned early before staff arrived, but when I uncovered her, my blood ran cold. The prosthetic eye had shifted upward, gazing at the ceiling. The jaw, though wired tight, looked looser. The mouth was slightly ajar, the lips parted enough to glimpse the teeth. I told myself there must be a logical explanation. Wire loosened, wax softened, but as my trembling hand reached toward the eye, it blinked. Slowly and naturally, the wax eyelid closed over the glass eye and reopened. My heart pounded. Something was very wrong. As I stared at the unsettling movement, I told myself there must be some reasonable cause. The wire securing the jaw might have loosened, the wax softened overnight, allowing shifts. Bodies sometimes settle after embalming. Rational explanations, all plausible. But then my trembling hand reached to adjust the glass eye, and it blinked. Not a slow mechanical shift, not under my touch, but a full blink as if alive. The wax eyelid I painstakingly rebuilt, closed over the prosthetic, then flicked open again. My heart hammered in my chest, my breath caught. I was frozen, not out of belief, but shock. As I looked closer, the mouth was no longer firmly shut. It parted slightly, the teeth visible, and the tongue had moved from its usual position against the bottom of the mouth to rest pressed together behind the teeth, as if trying to push something out or form a word. I had restored hundreds of bodies over the years. I'd witnessed typical postmortem changes, twitches from gas buildup, lids sinking into sockets, jaws dropping with tissue relaxation, and always those had explanations grounded in biology. But this was different. This felt deliberate, conscious. The body was trying to act. I forced myself to focus. The family was coming to view her in less than 2 hours. I had to fix this, make sure the face was perfect, every detail as expected, so they could say goodbye without horror or doubt. I reapplied extra adhesive to the prosthetic eye, sealing it firmly. I tightened the jaw wiring, twisting the thin surgical wire until it bit into my skin, tightening the jaw shut so no teeth showed. Using a wooden tool, I gently pressed her tongue back into place, then sealed lips firmly with thick layers of mortuary wax. The mouth was secure, immovable. Every stitch, every seam, every cosmetic detail was checked and rechecked. The face now looked flawless, like the photo, peaceful and serene. But unease lingered in the pit of my stomach. The prickling sensation, the feeling of being watched, was back, stronger. Then I noticed her hands just barely shifted. Her left hand, once resting calmly at her side, now curled near her chest as if gripping something invisible. I uncovered the body and repositioned her hand, feeling cool skin and firm tissue. But as I moved her hand back down, I encountered resistance as if the muscles themselves were pushing back. An impossibility. The muscles were dead, embalmed. I pushed harder, and the tension vanished. I arranged the fingers naturally and covered her again. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, haunted by that face, those shifting eyes, the open mouth, the tongue poised as if forming words I could not hear. After that horrifying moment, I sat down in the quiet room beside her, eyes fixed on the still face. Minutes dragged by. Nothing moved. The eyes stayed closed, the mouth remained sealed. Relief began to creep in. I thought I'd finally made the repairs hold. Then, without warning, the left eye, the real one, unaltered by my work, opened slowly. The lid lifted, revealing a cloudy, unfocused eye typical of death, but it was looking directly at me. It tracked my movements as I instinctively backed away, heart pounding wildly. I wanted to flee, but I couldn't. Within hours, her family would arrive, expecting a peaceful farewell to their wife, mother, sister. They couldn't see what I was witnessing. I forced myself to approach again, reaching out with a shaking hand to close that eye. As my fingers touched the lid, it shut smoothly as if nothing had happened. I sealed both eyes with a thin layer of adhesive, resealed the lips, and checked every stitch, every detail for imperfections. That's when I heard it, a faint rasping from her throat. A soft, steady sound of air moving through a narrow passage. I leaned closer, straining to listen. The noise changed shape, forming what sounded like a syllable part of a word. My heart raced. The dead can't speak. There's no air in the lungs, no control over vocal cords. Yet there was a whisper, a faint, pleading voice trying to say something, though I couldn't understand the words. Fear and disbelief overwhelmed me. I covered her again, locked the door, and staggered into the hallway, trembling uncontrollably. My mind frantically searched for explanations, escaping gases, acoustic illusions, but none fit what I heard. I returned to prepare for the family's arrival, forcing myself to focus. The viewing was quiet, the family's grief palpable. They thanked me afterward, telling the funeral director I'd done a beautiful job. She looks like herself, they said. But when I checked the body afterward, her eyes were open, both the real and prosthetic, staring at the ceiling. Her mouth was open as well, lips pulled back, revealing teeth, and a tongue pressed against the roof of the mouth, as if forming a word I desperately wanted to understand, but couldn't. I didn't scream or run. I stood there, realizing the body wasn't fighting me. It was trying to communicate in the only way it could. I wished I could decode the word, but I knew some truths were too heavy to bear. Since then, I've changed how I work. I no longer linger after the reconstruction. I finish my work, cover the body, lock the room, and leave until the viewing. Some things are better left unseen, some questions unasked. Yet, late at night, when the world is silent and dark, I wonder if she is still trying to speak. Beneath 6 feet of earth, beneath concrete, is her mouth still open? Is her tongue still forming that elusive word? Do all those faces I've restored long to tell me something that I, afraid or unwilling, never hear? I continue my work, skilled and needed. Families still find closure in the faces I restore. But every night that question haunts me. How many of the dead have stories left unspoken, secrets waiting for someone to listen? My name is Alaric Bernardo, and I've been an embalmer for 22 years. I work the night shift when the world feels quieter, when it's just me, the hum of the ventilation, and whoever comes through the door. During the day, this place buzzes with noise phones ringing, families crying, salesmen trying to turn grief into profit. But at night, it's still, clean, controlled, the way I like it. You learn things in the silence, things most people never notice. The way skin reacts under fluorescent light, how muscles hold tension even after death, and how that tension softens layer by layer until the face looks almost at peace. You start reading bodies like pages in a book, each scar a sentence, each bruise a word, every broken capillary a punctuation mark. My job is to erase those words, or at least blur them enough for the living to say goodbye without flinching. Last Tuesday, a body came in just after midnight. Male, mid-50s, found in his apartment after a neighbor reported a smell. 4 days gone, no signs of violence. Probable heart attack. When I unzipped the bag, the odor hit me sweet and sour with a metallic undertone. You never get used to it. You just learn to breathe through your mouth. I transferred him to the preparation table, careful not to disturb anything the medical examiner might need later. His abdomen had already turned a green-brown shade. Lividity pooled across his back and shoulders. Eyes half open, cloudy. Mouth ajar. Hands curled inward. I began the checklist. Height, weight, marks of identification. Tattoo of an anchor on the left shoulder. Surgical scar on the abdomen, decade old, fully healed. No other notable features. I documented everything, then began to clean him. Warm water, soap, gentle strokes. I started with the face, wiping away the residue that clings around the eyes and lips. His skin felt room temperature, meaning he'd been out of refrigeration long enough for the chill to fade. I worked methodically, section by section, removing the physical evidence of decay. When I finished, I stepped back and looked at him, not as a corpse, but as a person. You have to picture who they were before you can restore them. Imagine their expressions, the way their face might have moved when they smiled, how their hands might have gestured while talking. You're not recreating life, just its memory. He'd been a smoker, judging by the yellowed nails and texture of his lips. Maybe a drinker too, given the burst capillaries along his nose. But his face carried laughter, lines, creases carved by years of smiling. That's the detail I try to preserve, the reminder that even hard lives have warmth. At 12:45, I began the arterial embalming. Standard incision along the right clavicle, exposing the carotid artery and jugular vein. I use an old-fashioned gravity feed system, slow but reliable. The formaldehyde mixture pushes out the blood, replacing it with preservative. You monitor the pressure closely. Too much and the tissue swells, too little and it doesn't reach the extremities. The machine hummed softly. I watched the clear tube fill and the solution enter the artery. But after 10 minutes, nothing changed. The skin stayed slack. The color didn't brighten. The body wasn't taking the fluid. I checked everything, the machine, the pressure, the connections, all perfect. Still, no response. Sometimes older cases won't distribute fluid because vessels collapse, but this man hadn't been dead long enough for that. I adjusted the table angle to help circulation. Still nothing. It was as if his veins had closed themselves off, refusing entry. I shut the machine down, stitched the incision, and decided to try another point. I made a second cut at the femoral artery in the leg and began again, my hand resting lightly against the skin, feeling for change. That's when I felt it a twitch. Subtle at first, like a pulse under the fingertips. I froze. Then it came again, stronger, a deliberate contraction. I killed the machine, stepped back, staring at the leg. It was still, completely still. I told myself it was post-mortem twitching residual energy in dying cells. It happens. Nothing supernatural about it. But when I restarted the flow, the twitching returned, rhythmic this time. Not random. Pattern steady, pushing against the direction of the fluid, as though something inside the muscle was resisting. My chest tightened. I shut down the machine again, removed the tube, stitched the incision, and forced my hands not to shake. Something wasn't right. I decided to switch to cavity embalming, more invasive, but sometimes necessary. I inserted the trocar above the navel, angling it toward the diaphragm. Normal resistance. Tissue, muscle, membrane. I activated suction. Dark fluid bile, stomach contents, gas flowed through the tube. Standard. I switched to injection mode and began filling the cavity with preservative. The moment the fluid entered, the body moved. It sat up. Not slowly, violently, like it had been yanked upright by invisible hands. The trocar still pierced the abdomen. The tube snapped free, spraying formaldehyde across the table and my apron. I stumbled back, instruments clattering to the floor. A sound echoed through the silent room, sharp and unreal. The body sat there, chin resting on its chest, arms hanging limply at its sides. My heart hammered so hard I could barely breathe. Bodies don't sit up, not on their own. Not after 4 days. I forced myself forward, step by step, whispering explanations under my breath gas buildup, muscle release, anything. I touched its shoulder. The flesh was firm, cold, but pliable. I tried to push it back down, no movement, heart or nothing. It was rigid as if every fiber had locked. Then, suddenly, the resistance vanished. The body collapsed backward with a thud, arms flopping lifelessly. The air felt wrong, heavy. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly. I stood over him, staring at that blank, half-open gaze, the mouth still parted, the same lifeless mask. Nothing about him looked different, but I knew what I'd seen. I checked the table, the wheels, the locks. Everything stable. There was no reason, no mechanism that could explain what happened. I glanced at the clock, 1:37 A. The family would arrive in 8 hours. The work had to be finished. I cleaned the mess, replaced my gloves, and forced myself to continue. This time I avoided the machine. I worked manually syringe injections into specific muscles and tissues, small doses at a time. It's slower but precise. I started with the face, around the eyes, jaw, lips. The skin responded immediately, firming up, regaining a faint lifelike tone. I moved methodically down the body, muscle by muscle. The corpse stayed still, no resistance. By 3:45, the work was complete. His skin looked natural, his features calm. I dressed him in the clothing the family provided, a dark suit, crisp white shirt, blue tie. Combed his hair, adjusted his hands, applied cosmetics to hide discoloration. When I stepped back, he looked peaceful, like a man caught in mid-dream. No one would ever suspect what had happened on that table. I wheeled him into the refrigeration unit, sealed the door, and returned to clean the room. A spilled formaldehyde left a chemical sweetness in the air. I mopped the floor, sterilized the tools, logged the data. When I reached the line labeled Notes, Unusual Occurrences, I paused. My pen hovered. What could I write? That the body sat up, that it resisted, that it seemed aware? I left the space blank. By the time I finished, the first hint of dawn bled through the high windows. The day shift would be arriving soon. I sat at the desk, exhausted, listening to the refrigerator hum. Everything looked ordinary again, surfaces wiped, instruments aligned. But the silence had changed. It felt watchful. The family arrived at 9 sharp. They viewed the body, cried, thanked me for making him look so peaceful. Like he's sleeping, one of them said. I nodded, smiled politely, accepted their gratitude. When they left, I was alone again, standing by the closed casket. I wanted to open it, to make sure he was still lying flat, but I didn't. That night, I went home and didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him sit up again fast, deliberate, as though waiting for the right moment. My logical mind threw explanations at me. Gas buildup, chemical reaction, movement from suction pressure. But none of them matched what I'd felt beneath my hand, the coordinated, rhythmic twitch that had pushed back. I returned to work the next evening. Another body waited in the cooler. I told myself it was routine, procedure, but something had changed. I kept a loaded syringe on the table within reach and worked faster, minimizing time between cuts and closure. And for the first time in 22 years, I spoke to the dead. Not prayers, just small acknowledgments. Good evening. I'm going to start now. You're safe. It sounds strange, but it helped. The silence had always been my comfort, but after that night it felt dangerous, like something lived in it. Maybe the dead hear us. Maybe they know we're trying to preserve what's left, to give their families a few final moments of recognition. Or maybe they don't want to be preserved at all. Maybe some part of them resists the idea of being fixed in place, preferring to keep decaying to finish what nature started. I don't have an answer. I only know what I felt, that deliberate resistance, that pulse that wasn't mine. Since then, every time I unzip a body bag and see those clouded eyes, I wonder if it'll happen again. If the next one will twitch, or sit up, or push back. And so I talk to them now. I say their names when I can. I tell them what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. I tell them they're safe. I keep the light steady and the instruments warm. Because somewhere between the science and the silence, something lingers, something that listens. And if that presence hears me, if it understands, I hope it knows I'm not trying to trap it. I'm just trying to help it rest. My name's Evan Merrick, and for more than a decade, I've worked as a mortuary transport driver. Most people never think about this job until they need someone like me. When a person dies, in a hospital, a nursing home, or at home, someone has to pick them up and deliver them to the funeral home. That someone is usually me. I drive a modified van fitted with hydraulic lifts, locking floor mounts, and a steel-lined cargo compartment. My main tool is a gurney with 4 securing straps: chest, waist, thighs, and ankles. Not to restrain, but to prevent shifting. Dead weight moves differently, and the last thing you want is a body sliding mid-transport. I take every precaution to make sure that never happens. I work nights, always have. Death doesn't clock out, and families don't like waiting till morning, so from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., I'm on call. Some nights are quiet, others are chaos. Hospice pickups, accident victims, hospital releases. I've seen everything from peaceful passings to violent ends. You learn not to flinch. You just drive, deliver, and document. Last Friday night, around 11:15, I got a dispatch. Single car accident, Route 9, 40 miles north. Driver lost control, hit a tree, declared dead at the scene. Coroner cleared the body for transport. Straightforward call, or it should have been. I loaded my equipment, bag, gloves, sanitizer, paperwork, and headed north. The roads were empty, cold, and silent except for the hum of my tires. By the time I arrived, the tow truck was already there, its amber lights cutting through the dark. The driver waved me over, cigarette trembling between his fingers. The wreck was bad. Front end crumpled, windshield shattered. Steering wheel smeared with blood. The body lay beside the road under a tarp. Male, mid-30s, jeans, winter jacket. No major wounds, just deep bruises along the chest and shoulder, likely from the seatbelt. Dead maybe an hour. I'd bagged the body, secured the gurney, and with the tow driver's help, loaded him into the van. We strapped him down tight, chest first, hips, thighs, then ankles, routine. Consistency keeps you sane in this job. Once the gurney was locked into the mounts, I shut the doors, climbed into the cab, and started the long drive back. It was a quiet night, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. I kept the radio low, more to fill the silence than to listen. About 20 minutes in, I felt it, a faint shift in the van. Barely noticeable, like a small change in weight. I glanced in the mirror. The gurney hadn't moved. Everything looked fine. I kept driving. A few miles later, it happened again, heavier this time. The van lurched, enough to pull slightly right. I slowed, convincing myself it was wind or maybe a bad patch of road. Still, something in my gut felt wrong, a tension I've learned not to ignore. I pulled over at the next rest stop to check. Everything was in place, locks tight, straps secure, zipper sealed. But as I leaned closer, I heard it, a faint whispering sound, like cloth sliding against cloth. Then I noticed it. The chest area of the body bag looked higher. Barely perceptible, but noticeable enough that I froze. It looked like the body had taken a breath. Impossible. I pressed my palm to the bag. Cold, stiff, motionless. Probably just my mind. Long nights do that to you. I locked up and drove on. 10 miles later, the van jerked again. Hard. I almost veered into the shoulder. The gurney had shifted 2 inches right. It shouldn't have been able to. Those mounts can withstand collisions. My pulse spiked. I pulled over beneath an overpass where the floodlights cast long shadows. When I opened the cargo door, the gurney was tilted, one wheel loose from the mount. The bag had slid, body angled sideways. I set my flashlight on the floor, braced myself, and reached to realign the straps. And that's when I saw it. The bag moved. Not a twitch, a rolling, rippling motion along the abdomen, like something breathing beneath it. Slow, rhythmic. I froze. Gas buildup, I told myself. Happens all the time. Bodies swell, gases shift. It can mimic movement, but then I heard it. A faint, wet, dragging breath. Not from memory, from inside the bag. The kind of sound someone makes when lungs are full of fluid. My hand shook as I grabbed the zipper. Every instinct screamed, don't open it. But curiosity is stronger than fear. I unzipped it halfway. He lay exactly as I'd placed him. Face pale, eyes shut, mouth slightly open. No pulse, no movement. But the moment the zipper slid open, the motion stopped. Dead still. I touched his chest. Cold, rigid. No heartbeat, no rise, no fall. I zipped the bag shut, tightened every strap twice over, locked the mounts again, and drove. I didn't look back. The rest of the trip stretched on forever. Every bump, every sway, felt amplified. I could hear phantom breathing, even with the radio blaring. By the time I reached the funeral home, dawn was creeping in. I unloaded the gurney with the night attendant, older guy, quiet, polite, signed the paperwork, and walked back to the van. But I couldn't leave. Something compelled me to check the cargo hold again. Empty, clean, straps neatly coiled, mounts bare. Everything normal, except for the smell. That faint, metallic sweetness, unmistakable. The scent of decay. It shouldn't have been there anymore, not after unloading. I scrubbed every inch of the floor, walls, corners. The smell lingered. When I got home, I sat in the van for what felt like hours, hands still gripping the wheel. I replayed the whole thing, the shifting weight, the sound, the breathing, trying to rationalize it. Gas expansion, suspension noise, fatigue, anything logical, but none of it fit. Because I know what I saw, the way the chest rose and fell, the way the gurney moved on its own. My supervisor called the next morning, routine follow-up. I told him everything went fine. Body delivered, no issues. He thanked me and hung up. I didn't tell him about Route 9, or the breathing, or the smell. I've got another pickup tonight, a nursing home case, routine transport, simple job. But I can't stop thinking about that drive. About the in-between moments, when a body is no longer alive, but not yet laid to rest. That strange, suspended space between death and burial. Maybe that's where it happened. Maybe that's where something else still lingers. So tonight, I'll do it all again. I'll tighten every strap, double-check every lock, and turn the radio up loud. Because silence lets you hear things you shouldn't, and I don't ever want to hear them again.